Welcome to the Focus on Why podcast. I'm Amy Rowlandson and I ask my guests one simple question. Why? Focusing on the importance of why, I share with you the relatable, uplifting and inspiring conversations I have with people from all walks of life. This podcast will encourage you to focus on your why to enable and empower you to achieve the success you desire. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Today on Focus on Why, I am joined by Be More Red, Mel Sherwood. Mel, welcome.
Thank you very much. Appreciate being here.
And why are you here today? What is it you're up to?
Well, I am a pitch and presentation specialist. So I help people, mainly entrepreneurs and business professionals, to present themselves with more confidence, credibility, and charisma. And I'm also founder of The Red Effect, which is a program that I've created over the last couple of years to help people express themselves and before that, even reconnect with themselves or connect with themselves if they've never been connected with themselves, and then to be able to express themselves boldly and unapologetically is the plan.
And why would people not be connected with themselves?
So many reasons. And this stemmed from my own experience. So a couple of years ago, I found myself, despite business was going well, I just bought and renovated a new place to live, which was great. And I'd bought myself a cute little red convertible car, but I was just feeling miserable and I didn't have any desire to do anything. From the outside, everything looked great, but I just, for whatever reason, lost my mojo and I was totally uninterested in anything. And I just felt like I was wading through treacle. And I was questioning it, and it went on for quite a while. And to the point where I was thinking about giving up my business and looking at other options and even moving countries again and just, starting again and having something new. And then I was speaking with a friend of mine who I nearly didn't have the conversation because I was feeling so miserable and I thought, I don't want to burden anyone with my stuff. But I went to bed and our chat was due the next morning. So I thought I'll sleep on it and then I'll decide. Anyway, we had a conversation in the morning. It lasted 2 hours. And at the end of the conversation, he said, Mel, I think the answer is really simple. He said, everyone associates the color red with you. It's vibrant and positive and energetic. He said, I think you just need to put on your red lipstick and go for a drive in your red car. Just stop being blue and be more red. And of course, if I was if I was having really a lot of problems with my mental health, you wouldn't just say, stop being blue. But what he said to me was perfect. And at the end of that conversation, there were 3 words ringing in my ear: be more red. And I thought, oh, and I suddenly, it would not stop. That phrase kept going. What does be more red mean? And within 24 hours, I'd started writing a book. I'd bought the domain name bemorered.com, and I'd started to think about what does being more red mean. And for me, it was about reconnecting with who I am. And the whole lipstick comment was because when I was feeling so miserable, I don't know what happens to you when you're a bit out of sorts, but for me, a few things happen. I spend a lot of time on social media, observing other people's lives and avoiding my own. I eat my body weight in chocolate and I stopped wearing red lipstick. And I'm quite well known for my red lipstick. I wear it when I feel good and I wear it when I want to feel good. But I got to the point that I just couldn't be bothered putting it on. And to be honest, I was wearing my pajamas a lot as well. And just didn't really work with the pajama look. But he had said, put on your red lipstick and just be more red. So I thought, what does it mean? So it means for me is getting back to who I am at my core. And what I'd realized is that I'd spent so much of my life actually trying to be who I thought I should be and do what I thought I should do that I completely lost track of who I was. And even in my business, it was quite successful, but it wasn't what I'd set out to do necessarily. So then I started to think, well, what does be more red mean for me? And then what does it mean for other people? And then I started to think about red as an acronym. And I was thinking about, well, we have a different shade of red for each situation that we're in. So in one situation, we might want to be more I don't know, real, entertaining and dynamic. In another situation, we might want to be more radiant, enchanting and dazzling. And so I started to just play about with these words, and I came up with a whole lot of words that started with R, E, and D. And then I sort of worked on this program over the time. It kind of came and went. And I had this motivation to do it, and then I didn't. And then I had motivation, and then I didn't. And everyone I spoke to about it said, oh my goodness, Mel, that's so you. That's really exciting. And every time you talk about it, you light up, which was true. But I've only realized recently that the reason I didn't go gung-ho and straight into it is because, to be honest, I was exhausted and I couldn't fathom. I knew it could be something amazing and something big, but I just didn't have the energy, physically, emotionally, any way, shape or form to actually pursue it. So I had started incorporating it a bit in my work, and I ran a challenge called the Red Effect Challenge last year, which was a 5-day thing, which got some great feedback. But again, I didn't want to jump in boots and all. There was something holding me back. And I was in Cambodia and Bali in January. Reason I was there is because I'd been involved in a fundraising team that raised funds to build a school in Cambodia. So we went over for the official opening of that. And we were in Cambodia for about 3 weeks and then Bali for another week. So there was a team of 12 and then 5 of us from that team went to Bali for a week afterwards. And on our last day in Bali, we'd been to a sort of a cleansing ceremony in this beautiful temple, and it was just a really lovely experience. And after that, in the afternoon, I was sitting with someone by the pool, and I don't do sitting by the pool. I find it really challenging to relax while other people were sitting by the pool. I was out walking and exploring the surroundings and whatever, but I was sitting chatting, and it dawned on me that it was the first time that I could remember feeling relaxed. I couldn't even remember when was the last time I'd felt that. I went, oh my goodness, is this what it feels like to be relaxed? I'd been away for a month and I was leaving the next day, and I thought there's something really wrong with this picture. And I think when you run your own business, it's always on your mind. There's always things that you're doing. But I just realized that I hadn't been being more red. I hadn't been focused on myself and what was important to me. And part of what is important to me is making sure that my health and well-being is taken care of, and that I'm in the best state that I can be in, so that I can serve other people more effectively. So there was this whole kind of realization so that was the end of January. On the 26th of January, I flew back to Edinburgh and found that within a couple of days, I was back in it, really back in it. And then the whole COVID thing, which had been indicated, we flew back via Paris, and at the airport, we were greeted by people in spacesuits and handing out leaflets and so it was really a big thing to come after being away for a month and then come back to this. And then so I kind of had an idea about where things might be heading, but I just got straight back into work mode, didn't change a thing after that realization. And then gradually, as we approached sort of in March, all of my work got cancelled or postponed. And at that point, the day before lockdown was announced, actually, I had gone for a walk on the beach, which is where all my major decisions are made, actually. And I left my car not knowing what I was doing, and I got back to my car and it hit me that I needed to take a break. And I thought, with all of this that's going on, I think there was one more thing that hadn't been cancelled or postponed yet that I still had to do, but I made the decision then that I was going to take a step back, because I always thought I couldn't, because how could I? But if clients weren't going to be interested in me, pitch and presentation skills training, that's not the priority when COVID's hitting in your businesses. So I thought, do you know what? If ever I'm going to take a break, now is the time, because I can, be quiet. No one's going to be having an issue with that. There was the option of pivoting and getting everything online, but the whole energy around that at the time, where everybody was like, me, look at me, have my free webinar, do this, my this stuff and that stuff, and this is how you cope, and this is how you be online. And whilst I have the skills to support people to interact effectively online, and actually I have just launched a new coaching program called Vava Zoom about powering up your online presence. But at the time, I just didn't have the energy to focus on that. So I took a step back, and actually, a whole another part of the story was, while I was away, I made the decision that I was moving back to the beach, because I had lived by the beach, and I feel great. I feel soul nurtured when I'm by the beach. And for various life reasons, I had moved away, and I thought, right. And so within a few days of getting back to the UK, I was looking at properties, and I was looking at how I could make that happen. So I had then arranged, it was all organised. I was due to leave to move on the 3rd of April, but everything got put on hold because of COVID. I've ended up moving, which was great, but it was all kind of part of that process. And so I, at the time, just took a step back, and I was halfway through packing, and I just, I tried. I didn't totally succeed, but I spent a lot less time thinking about my business, and I wasn't on social media promoting it. I just stepped right back. And I did a lot of personal development work, reconnecting with who I was, and being more red, that whole. And so I emerged from that rest, and then having moved to the close to the sea, where I feel soul nurtured. And the timing felt right to actually launch the program. So I did that with fear and trepidation, because it's something new and it's something different to what I've been doing previously. But have just finished the first program, which had incredibly transformational results for people. And I've now got a whole group of, and I've aimed it specifically at women, although I know a lot of men are very interested in it as well. But for this particular round, I worked with a group of women who have just, totally transformed the way they think. I had 2 of them dye their hair red, which is like really cute, I thought. But one of them had always wanted to do it since she was a teenager, and never had done it, and just went, actually, this is who I want to be. This is who I am. And so just took and part of, when we look at some of the R, E, and D words, hers was risky, emboldened, and daring. So of course she's taking risks that or doing things that she wouldn't normally do. So anyway, that's a big, long, roundabout way of saying where I'm at.
That's great. And I just want to come back to that initial sort of doubt that you had with yourself about asking for help at the beginning, and a sort of reticence to have the conversation with someone. Was that because you didn't want to burden them, or was it because you didn't want to change yourself?
Interesting question, because I would have said I wouldn't want to have burdened them, but it could well be, and I hadn't considered whether it was that I didn't want to change myself. Having said that, I knew things needed to change, and I knew that part of that was me reconnecting with who I was. I knew I was disconnected, and so actually, just that short, sharp message, stop being blue and be more red, just had the desired effect. And it literally, a light bulb went off for me, and it's created this whole new part of my business, which is fab.
And that's incredible that, a 2-hour conversation can lead to entire brand and business. So I hope you thank them very much.
Totally. Absolutely. Yes. We're very good friends, and I'm super, super grateful.
So anybody who's going on this sort of journey of reconnecting with themselves, what would you moved countries, you said that, you need to be by the beach. How else can people sort of reconnect with themselves?
I think for me, there's a few different things, and it's understanding your values, which I've done a lot of work on this year. I've done values work in the past and never really committed to it. Almost, it's like there's no point asking about what your values are and then going, oh yeah, that's my values, but then actually making no effort to live by that. So earlier on this year, during the lockdown, I started thinking about values, and I kind of boiled it down to my 5, and I properly wrote them down, and I explored what that meant. And I've always felt like I've had so many, I didn't know what it was, but I managed to kind of whittle them down. And for me, the key things, and I've always known that the first one is freedom. And so for me, that means freedom of time and location in terms of the work that I do. It's freedom is ultimately, financially being financially free enables more freedom and choice. And it really is about choice for me. So yeah, so there's freedom, and then beauty, which seems a bit weird, but it's not about how people look. It's nothing to do with that kind of outside beauty. But for me, beauty is about nature and art and aesthetically pleasing surroundings. I like balance and that sort of thing. And then connection, and that's with myself, with other people, with the planet, with the wider universe. So being able to connect on many different levels. Expression, and again, that's helping, making sure that I'm expressing myself. And that's a theme that's come up in my life, Amy, that we might explore. But the challenge to express myself, and then but also helping others to express themselves. And then finally, I've grouped it as best self. And for me, that's about being the best that I can be physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So that's about continual growth, really, and understanding myself more, and just making sure that I support myself to show up as my best. So there was those, I kind of whittled it down to those 5. They're quite broad, but knowing what they are has really helped me just measure everything against it and what I'm doing, which is, reinforced my move to the beach because that's aesthetically pleasing and it nurtures my soul and I feel connected and I can walk in nature and that sort of thing. So that's really important, I think. But taking time instead of just being on the treadmill, and that's been my biggest challenge, is to and I'm still not an expert at it, but I know every time I actually take time to write in my journal, which is a key part of it for me. I'm a big journal writer, quite often when I've got things to deal with. But interestingly, as I said, all my big decisions have been made by the beach. And I looked at my journal not so long ago of the one that I was writing in when I made the decision to move this time, to take the time off during COVID lockdown. And it's so interesting that just exploring feelings and just getting it out can sometimes give you so much better perspective as well. So journaling is a big key for me. I talk about meditation. I'm not great at it, but my meditation sometimes is just walking on the beach, spending that time, allowing myself to be. Those are some of the tools I think to get back to who you are.
And when you describe your values, what I hear coming through, so maybe even being the umbrella for all of them, is this authenticity, this sort of needing to be authentic to yourself.
Yeah. And interestingly, I did with Nikki Owen, I became an accredited authentic charisma coach. And she, she's the queen of charisma. She knows, she's studied it. It's a whole life's work. But what was interesting to me is that I went to that training and I had a limiting belief that I wasn't being fully me. And so interestingly, I worked through an exercise with one of the other women who was on the course. And we looked at this limiting belief that I didn't feel like I was being fully me, and then worked through what that might look like. And then it was like, well, it's okay to be me. And we went through that and I'm like, that's not really doing it for me. It's not resonating. And I had this whole experience where something came to me, what felt like it was me. But because of who I was talking to, she struck me as someone who didn't necessarily appreciate swearing, and I wanted to swear in this little phrase that came to me. So, and I was having this dialogue with myself in my head going, oh, you can't say that because you might be offended. Oh, come on, Mel. This is all about being authentic. This whole conversation was going on in my head. Eventually I said to her, look, something's coming to me, but it's got a swear word in it. And I don't want to, oh no, she said, come on, this is you being authentic. So, what came to me is the phrase, I am who I am, so you can all F off. And by you all F off, I didn't mean people, I meant society's expectations, my own limiting beliefs, anything that was going to stop me being fully who I am could just F off. So it was quite a transformational experience for me. And interestingly enough, I met another friend of mine after I'd been on this course for 2 or 3 days. And I met up with her, and from a distance, she was calling out to me, and I didn't hear her. But when she got close to me, she said, great to see you, da 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 da. She said, wow, you seem so different. And she had no idea where I'd been for 3 days. And I said, what do you mean? She said, well, you don't look any different. You're just different. And she said there was just this energy, this aura about me. And I was fascinated that she could see that from a distance, this whole just change. And it was about me accepting who I am. Now it wasn't immediate, because it's been a journey. And the whole expression thing. So interestingly, I have a background as a performer, and I had wanted to become a performer. And as a young girl, I was always, pretending I was a, singer or dancer or something. And I was the firstborn. So, until my brother came along when I was about 2.5, nearly 3, I was the star of the show. And so then he came along, and anyway, so I kept on with this kind of perform, but I never believed it was possible to be a performer. I just loved doing it. And then when I was about 8, I was pretending I was an opera singer. So I was wandering around the house in this silly costume and going, oh, and my uncle, he was there, and he said, you're hurting my ears. And he laughed at me, and he said, you'll never be a singer. And in that moment, that 8-year-old girl's dreams were just shattered, and it had such a profound effect on me. And it even makes me emotional when I think about it right now. But that little girl, her dreams were crushed, and the impact of it was that I didn't sing. I stopped singing. This is about this whole expression thing we were talking about. And I got so, I stopped. I decided I wanted to, in my teens, I decided I wanted to be a performer, but I always knew I couldn't sing, so I couldn't be a singer. So I went and had some singing lessons to really make me more versatile as a performer, knowing I'm not a singer, but if I could sing, it would help. And I loved musical theatre. So I had years and years and years of singing lessons, but I never improved because I didn't practice, because I didn't want the neighbours to hear. And so this whole process of singing, and then I didn't sing in public solo until I was in my early 20s, nearly 25 actually. And even then it was with excruciating fear and anxiety and trepidation and paranoia. And I had an opportunity I've had some terrible singing experiences where I've literally I've been totally crushed, and I've come off stage. Actually, I had to sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow in front of an audience of 400 people, and I was so scared that and the whole entire time I was singing it, I had the voices in my head saying, "Oh my God, that was a terrible note. That was awful." So I'm just standing there shaking like anything. I finished that performance. I walked off stage. I walked into the dressing room. I picked up my car keys and got my stuff, and I left the theatre. I didn't even wait for the curtain call. I've had, I've not even shown up for auditions for things because I was so scared. And so I've had, I've been cast lead role in shows, and I've had a meltdown half an hour before the opening night curtain goes up. And then I sung, so kind of long story short, I ended up singing in a 60s girl band, a tribute show, which I loved. But there was 3 of us. We all sung sort of a share of the lead singing and backing each other up. And I always felt like the weak link. I always thought that why was I in this group? And if the audience member that if I could see anyone in the audience and they leaned over to speak to the person beside them, I'd imagine that they were saying, "She sounds terrible. What's she doing with this group?" But all the time I'm smiling and singing and doing this whole thing, but there was this disconnect because of all this stuff that was going on in my head. And then I had, all sorts of, it's been an ongoing journey. So I'm 50 now. When I was about 48, I thought, I can't do this anymore. And I sung with that group for 6 years. And then I've done, I've had lead roles in musicals, not pro musicals, but Amdram, which I've done a fair bit of since I moved to Scotland. And then I joined a band, and that was even more challenging, because whilst singing as a character, I could get away with it, but actually singing as myself, that was a totally different experience. And so I was quite scared, and I just thought, you know what? I'm 48. I'm tired of having this. I've got to do something about it. So I did some work with another, a therapist, I suppose, or a coach, and identified that whilst I thought it all stemmed from the thing that happened to me when I was 8, it actually stemmed from much earlier on. So as a 3-year-old, when I was the star of the show until my brother was born, I came back to a memory where I was wandering up and down the hallway in the house, making lots of noise, as a 3-year-old does. And my dad said to me, "Pipe down, Melanie, you'll wake the baby." Now, it was a flippant comment. He didn't mean anything by it, but just be quiet because you'll wake the baby. Now, as a 3-year-old, I took that to mean that it's dangerous to express myself. And I've carried that with me my entire time. So I think when we talk about purpose, I think there's some, and I don't know if I've nailed it or what my purpose is, but I feel like that there's this whole thing about being able to express myself, and I want to help other people to be able to express themselves. And we started this when you asked me about the authenticity and that sort of thing. And it is, I've found I want to be authentic, and I want to support other people to communicate in a way that's authentic to them. And I don't want any, that's not my style to go, oh, you should do it this way or that way. It's about finding your own style. And it's interesting because there's this piece of, I think I probably am quite authentic, but there is a fear of it as well, that there's always that challenge where, and I'm getting better at this obviously too, but everybody has the same fear of not being liked, of not being loved, of being judged. And that's when people come to me for coaching on their presentation skills. It's not about and the actual skills of doing that. It's more about what's going on up here. So, and how they feel about it, or how they think people will perceive them. So an interesting journey, but I feel I turned 50 this year, and I think there's also something about that as well. And because my birthday, I was born in 1970, so there's this, every new decade feels to me a whole new, almost reinvention of myself, and it's got a great energy to it. So it seems right that this year is the year that I've brought the whole red effect into being, and in this particular way.
And how does it feel to have got rid of a limiting belief that you'd been carrying around with you for best part of 45 years?
Yeah, pretty good. And what's interesting is, I work with people, and I use NLP techniques and various techniques to help other people with that thing of just lifting it. It's funny, we and a lot of people who come to me have had it since they were 5 or something, and they were in this school play, or they had to stand up in front of their class and the teacher said they were stupid or whatever. We carry around this stuff. I mean, I remember years ago I did a talk on around the words, the power of words and the impact that they can have. And I told that story as part of some other, woven in with some other stories. And a woman came up to me afterwards and said, "Oh my goodness," she said, "that hit such a nerve with me." She said, before I got married, I loved painting. I was an artist. I just loved painting. It was my joy in life. And then when I was in my early days of my marriage, my husband said to me, "Oh, you're not very good at that, are you?" And she said, "I put away my paints, and I'm still married to the man, but 30 years later, I've never painted again." And she just had this realization about what she had done from that simple statement. And I think it's such a common theme for people that for whatever reason, someone says, a flippant comment, and certainly my uncle didn't mean anything by the comment that he said, but we take things in different ways. I think we need to be really careful of the words that we say and the impact that they could have on others. So it's an interesting challenge, I suppose, that we have in life to use our words in a supportive way, but also to not allow other people's words to have such a massive impact on us, where we have to kind of be strong within ourselves, and have that self-belief. And it's like, I'm 50 now. I'm just starting to realize what my skills and talents are, and starting to really embrace that and realize that there is something about me that is worth sharing and supporting others. There's gifts there that, who am I to be squashing that down? And this year it's been interesting because part of the whole expression thing, I literally woke up one day and a poem, and I don't even write poetry, but like a spoken word kind of, it rhymed. So kind of, I didn't, but it just poured out of me. And in half an hour I had written this poem. And for the next 2 days, I couldn't not think about it. I had to, the majority of it poured out, but I had to tweak it and whatever. So that just is, I think when you reconnect with who you are, that's when all those wonderful things happen and you're in flow. And the other thing is that I wrote a song this year as well, and I'm not a songwriter at all. And so my brother passed away 9 years ago, and it was interesting that I've realized over this work that I've been doing, and the personal development work and the getting quiet and listening and doing meditations over this period of this year, I've realized some other things that have been going on for me. And as a 3-year-old, I actually realized that I've been dimming my light since my brother was born. I was sensitive enough to know that he was quite different from me, that he was a quieter being, quite artistic, and maybe wouldn't be understood in the world. And so I have realized that there was this sort of unconscious decision as a 3-year-old to pipe down, maybe, as my dad said, but actually to not outshine my brother. And then he passed away 9 years ago, and I think I've potentially been sabotaging myself still, and this song that I've written is really about how I'm ready for both of us to shine. So by me holding on to that and not letting his spirit or his soul soar, then it's keeping both of us trapped. Somehow I've realized that there must have been, and I don't understand all of this. I don't know what I believe or anything, even about past lives or anything like that. But my sense is that our soul is more eternal, and that we just have this human experience. But I sense that there was some kind of soul contract between my brother and I, before we were even born. And the reason I really super dawned on me is because during a meditation, guided meditation, there was the suggestion to imagine a womb, and you could either imagine yourself in the womb, or if you're a mother or whatever, imagine the womb or whatever. So the vision that came to me was my brother and I both in the same womb. And it kind of dawned on me that there was this connection there that I maybe hadn't let go of. And once I realized that, I had to do something almost symbolic, really, to allow that to be processed. And I'm a big one. So I wrote a one-woman play and performed it at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival back in 2008. And that was based on my own life experience. And what I've realized is, because I'm a creative, I'm not creative all the time, but I think the process of being creative is part of the processing of that emotion, and it's almost quite cathartic to do it. So anyway, so I wrote this song, and I've done a rough recording of it, and as soon as the ban on travel and whatever lifts, then I'll be into the studio to actually record it. Don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it feels like another sort of chapter has closed, so that I can allow my brother's soul to soar and to fly, and enable me to really step into the light now that I'd been, dimming or, staying in the shadows previously. So yeah, interesting. There's all these little things throughout my life that are leading me to where I am right now, which is really quite exciting and a little bit scary too.
And it's interesting, you talked about the sort of power of words and the impact that words can have. And you said you wrote a poem, but you're sort of not a poet, and you wrote a song, but you're not a songwriter. But you are, because you did write
Clearly,
a poem.
yes.
And you are a playwright, and you are a singer, a songwriter, and a poet.
Yeah.
And this is, we always have this sort of doubts that because we have done something once, that doesn't make us that sort of particular title, but it does. It just because you're not sort of Paul McCartney, who writes millions of songs, doesn't make you any less of a songwriter. So it's interesting how we sort of and also we struggle to find our gifts, our strengths, and sort of when we understand our values, it all starts to slot into place. And I
Yeah.
spend so many hours with people working on their values, and it just strikes me as how, you don't know them, you sort of drift around. And when you have your values, and it's not just a paper exercise, because I think there is a difference. A lot of people do it as a bit of lip service as part of a course, and then they sort of, as you say, put it into a drawer, and it stays for,
That was me.
there are but if they didn't connect, and clearly it didn't connect because you hadn't spent enough time, or you hadn't done it in a way that actually resonated. But this time was different because you allowed yourself to express yourself.
Yeah. And interestingly, I mean, years ago, I came up with what I thought was a bit of a purpose. And it was interesting because in the lead up to when I was about to turn 40, I got super paranoid about finding my purpose, because as right through my 20s, it had been all about performing. So I'd wanted to be a performer. That was my goal. And then I hit 30, I got married, I got a full-time job. And interestingly, I'd worked alongside my performing career. I'd worked for a big retailer in their head office and in marketing roles. And so and customer relations and that sort of thing. So I learned so much about business during that time. I'm so grateful for that experience. And obviously paid the bills when I wasn't performing. But then when I hit 30, suddenly I felt like I had to, be grown up or whatever. And I got married, got a real job, permanent job. But I realized, that all fell apart. So that's a whole nother story, but don't worry about that. Where was I going with this even? Purpose. That's right. So as I was approaching 40, so I was already living in Scotland by then. And I was asking everyone I knew, do you know what your purpose is? I felt like I needed to know my purpose. And I was out, and quite a few people were like, I think I'm living my purpose. And I'm like, that's so cool. That must feel amazing. And I asked one friend who I've known since I was 4 years old. We don't see each other that much, but I was back in Australia, and I said to her, what's your purpose? I'm trying to find my purpose. She's like, why are you looking for your purpose? And she said, isn't the purpose of life just to live it? And oh my goodness, it was like a light bulb went off for me. And it just almost gave me permission to not search for my purpose. So I went into my 40s without the pressure of trying to know what my purpose was. And then throughout the last sort of 10 years, I've had different kind of snippets have come to me, but I've maybe ignored them or just kind of put them aside. And then I had a time when some words came to me about, my purpose is to use my energy, positivity, and creativity to inspire and entertain. And then I added in to educate as well, because that's kind of what I do. And then I also had this thing about really want to live my life, create truthfully, fearlessly, creatively, and abundantly. And I looked at those over this last year. I kind of revisited those, and I looked at my life, and I went, okay, am I living it truthfully? I'm getting there. I'm trying to be true to myself. Fearlessly? No, I'm still holding myself back in so many ways. Creatively? Sometimes, but probably not enough to be fulfilling for me. And abundantly? Yes, in some ways, and no in other ways. So I went back to that, and then then I just started applying the red effect to myself. So I started to think, well, what would be my shade of red? And I came up with the shade of red: real, expressed, and daring. And that kind of summed up that truthfully, fearlessly sort of thing. And that's when I really stepped into it. And I brought the program to life. And because I got, I got real, I got true to myself, I got really totally on that. Expressed, and instead of using the word expressive, I used the past tense of expressed, because it was so important for me to not leave things unsaid and to get brave about actually speaking up, even if it didn't feel comfortable, and that sort of thing as well. And then daring, stepping outside my comfort zone. And I've done that so many times in my life, but I'd still realized that I was holding myself back. So I've applied that shade of red to my life this year. And I think that's kind of my overarching shade of red for my entire life. But I'm also looking at, okay, so what does 2021 look like for me? And I started to think about, well, that's about recognition for me. It's starting to bring the whole red effect into being, and writing the book that I started and that sort of thing. And then expansion, because it's time for me to expand the business, expand what I'm doing. So recognition, expansion, and the D for next year is going to be about delegation, because I have realized that I cannot do it by myself. And my mum has said to me many times, the first words that came out of my mouth, that as soon as I could start to talk, were me do myself. And I've always been fiercely independent. I don't like asking for help. I want to be able to do it all myself. But I'm finally accepting that I can't, and I need to build a team around me so that I can work in my zone of genius and allow other people to work in their zone of genius as well. So they'll be being more red while I'm being more red, and together we can, create something amazing, hopefully. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
That's fantastic. And you're right about the purpose word. It can be a scary word, and a lot of people put a lot of pressure on themselves to find their purpose. And it doesn't work that way. It's a case of you create it, you actually make you just through design and just relaxing into, as you say, your zones of genius. That's where you're likely to find it. So, or not find it, create it,
Yeah, or just live it. Yeah.
Live it. Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's some questions that had started, that I now use almost as a guide. And it's, I've got, along with my 5 key values that I've got up there, on a sign, a poster in my bedroom that I see every day. And I've got, what's your shade of red? And I've got my other 4 words, the truthfully, fearlessly, creatively, and abundantly. But I've also got choose love. And the questions underneath that is, does it bring me joy? Is it good for my soul? And it's such a valuable tool to think about in terms of decision making, and every single thing that I do. If I go back to those and I think about, my shade of red, my values, and those questions helps guide me every day, really.
And it's a fantastic sort of 2 sort of grounding elements to have. Does it bring you joy? And what was the second one?
Is it good for my soul?
Is it good for my soul? And I know that Marie Kondo says, if you're going to go through your wardrobe, she says, put everything up and feel it and say, does this bring you joy? And if it doesn't, then you don't need to keep it anymore. So it's a great method to use. Really good. So Mel, it's been wonderful exploring your purpose. It's whizzed by, it really has. And I just want to say thank you so much for being more red on the podcast. It's been fantastic. And I know that you'll be inspiring lots of people out there, particularly women, but not necessarily just women, to be more red.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. So how would people get in contact with you?
Probably the best way is through my website, melsherwood.com. Very simple. Otherwise, I'm on all social media channels. You'll find me on LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. So but probably my website's the easiest, melsherwood.com.
Perfect. I'm sure people want to see how red you are and just to connect with you in all of those places. I'll make sure they go in the show notes. So final few words from you, Mel, before we say goodbye, please.
Wow. Final few words. I think I would encourage everyone to just get back to reconnecting with who you really are, and think about, okay, what's my shade of red? What's my RED word that's going to guide me either overall for my life, but also if you've got a certain situation coming up, like, for example, a presentation or an interview or something, how do I want to show up? Because we make choices every moment of every day. And ultimately, I wrote a blog post recently, actually, about red being an attitude. It literally, we have a choice. And that's the brilliant, wonderful thing. We sometimes think we don't have choices, but in whatever situation we're in, we always have choices. So how do you want to see that? And that's why I often think to myself, well, what shade of red can I apply in this situation to make the best choice for me? So that would be my question to folk. What's your shade of red?
Thank you for listening to the Focus on Why podcast. I'm Amy Rowlandson, and if you've enjoyed this episode, please leave me a 5-star Apple Podcast review. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram and Facebook, and become a member of my inspiring, uplifting and positive Focus on Why Facebook group. I help people to focus on their why with clarity, uniting their passion with their purpose with a plan to create the life they truly desire. If you would like me to help you focus on your why, then please book a free 20-minute coaching call via calendly.com/Amy Rowlandson. And if you haven't already, please sign up for the Friday Focus weekly newsletter via my website, amyrowlandson.com. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.